okay, I want you to think about this real quick.
Right.
4K, 2K, okay, not okay. All right? Let me just explain something.
He's lost his mind.
No. Let me explain something.
Welcome to the Power Brothers podcast, where we all sound identical and our points don't matter. Today's topic: illness.
We all have it.
I mean, I've got Lyme disease.
Yeah.
And,
Our producer's dying of common hay fever.
There's Lyme disease, there's Crohn's disease, there's mental
I do have
disease.
that.
I mean, our producer is a certified petri dish.
He's patient zero.
I mean, he's patient zero of all sorts of things. So, you know.
Our producer is Tim Allen.
Yeah.
He turned into Banjo
Certified
Kazooie there for a
petri
second.
dish. I think he was trying Banjo-Kazooie, but it was definitely the Tim Allen.
Welcome to Home Improvement.
Welcome to Home Improvement. I'm Al.
We're back. We're back in the not set.
This is a set.
You know.
Anything you set up is a set.
Yeah, this is the set.
Yeah.
This
And-
is Michael's.
Oh, and get this.
We're now sponsored by Polar Water
Or take a, yeah.
and
Starbucks.
Or Trader
and all of those brands have to give us money because we showed their logo.
We're going to have to
And,
blur
um,
all of this.
And to be clear, and there's also why is there an Awala? Get this out of my
Is that yours, Trader Joe's?
It is. It
Yeah.
is. We're here.
Okay, so as far as news goes this week, pretty much
Big ones.
pretty
The
quiet.
big one dropped.
The
The big one.
the
big one.
big one.
CEO of Limited Run Games.
Ooh, you have something. Go.
He got flown out to a press event by none other than Reggie Fils-Aimé. No, it was Nintendo of America. I don't know why I said Reggie.
Reggie
Fils-Aimé.
Fils-Aime?
Reggie Fils-Aime.
That's incredible.
Yeah, we would love to have you on the podcast, Reggie.
Reggie, don't do that. Don't
They,
debase yourself.
Maybe
zero viewership.
Listen,
Maybe he's our one viewer.
I almost bought GameStop stock, Reggie. So
He's not there anymore. That's a bad.
Don't say that.
I didn't
Don't
though.
say
He
that.
left.
Yeah.
I didn't buy it.
Yeah,
Almost.
I almost
Um,
did.
So
Robinhood
what-
wouldn't
so
let me.
Remind me, who is it that flew
The
out?
CEO of Limited Run Games said
Okay.
he was flying out to an event he was not allowed to talk about, but it was being hosted by Nintendo of America.
Oh, Switch 2.
What could this be?
Switch 2 stuff?
I don't know. That's
exciting.
the tiniest morsel of news because you're right.
But
It's been a very slow. He was also not the only one. It seems like everybody was who tweeted about going to this event were indie partners
Oh, okay.
because it would make
Okay.
sense to show actual partners
Right.
the thing this late in development, but you might only show your indie partners pretty late, especially
late.
because like Limited Run doesn't need a whole lot of time to take whatever they're doing and like adjust it for your new console.
That's fair. Yeah, that's good. Mike, those wavelengths can go up just a little bit. You could move us all up just a little bit.
What are the odds?
No, the speaking of indie developers, a game that I think it came out today that looks really good, really exciting. I'm waiting for the physical edition to come out on the 21st. Is the Plucky Squire? Have you seen this game?
No.
Have not.
It looks
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a dungeon crawler, except you are a character in a storybook, and then you can hop out of the storybook and run around the kids' playroom to like get to other things. But also like the words, like remember the old Winnie the Pooh movie, the old VHS? The words at the top of the page, like a dry lake bed. And then if you go up there and you find the word wet and you put it on dry, the lake bed fills up with water. And so
Okay.
because now it's a wet lake bed.
Now, I hate children. How will that affect my enjoyment of this game?
As far as we've seen, there are no children. in
I
it.
don't like video
okay,
games.
good.
Is
You're
that
just
going to
the-
affect my enjoyment
No,
of this?
you might actually like it.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe.
No,
Well,
it looks
in-
really good.
So
Came out today digitally.
In other news, we're using another camera. We a whole
Yeah.
a
Keep
whole
changing.
other camera.
that the actual, if you
can
guys
we-
haven't detected it yet, the like bit of this video podcast is that we use a different camera
Every
every
single-
week.
and
And they
once
progressively
gets
older.
You replace the camera, and once again, it is not positioned so that I can stare directly.
No,
in it when
this one
something
is
stupid
better.
happens.
You
Look,
can stare.
Oh no,
into
I
it.
can't. Oh yeah, if I do this.
Yeah, just do
Look
that.
at that. Okay, yeah. Now I'm looking.
Just
into the
do
camera.
that.
This is embarrassing.
I don't think you could with the old one either.
I
the
absolutely.
next
could
time
look into
you're
camera.
behind the
I don't
camera.
think you can.
That's
All
probably
right.
for the best.
That's-
Um,
we don't want to scare people off.
I've got video game news.
Oh yeah, okay, go.
Jedi Survivor
Yep.
just had its most recent patch, and it's now de novo-less.
As it always should
Good.
And wouldn't you believe, people are saying the performance for the game has skyrocketed. It just works so
Weird.
much better now that it's
Crazy.
not
It's like
running
you shouldn't
de novo.
include viruses with
So-
your video
So
games.
this begs the question: how long has this game been out? Close to a year,
not quite a year.
right?
Like 6 months
Yeah,
at
let's say
least.
some
yeah.
months it's been out. Okay, so in all
As
of
of
this
recording.
time, the game has been running horribly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's still not. I
Famously,
don't
it ran
think it's still
terrible
running
at launch. Yeah.
I don't think it's still like a perfect game as far as how it runs.
Right.
But the improvement is drastic from what I've reading.
Well, the new one
preliminary
uses
things here.
tons of system resources.
Resources.
I mean, like,
It does,
It's
yeah.
hugely impactful.
So let me ask you something. Would you say here, just hearing that news,
Mhm.
that this is indicative of the fact that anybody that uses Denuvo is extremely anti-consumer?
Yeah, well, yes. It definitely feels like something that is not. It's obviously not the developer's choice. It's something that like the
It's clearly
Publisher.
It's clearly a publisher.
is putting
decision.
on.
Sure.
Unless
There's
you
a
are in a
constant-
position where you can like develop and publish, like Larian.
There's a
or
constant
something.
battle between publisher and player. Like the publisher.
Let me just tell you, I'm sorry to interrupt you here. This
Go ahead.
podcast is boonk as hell. All right, it is absolutely so boonk, and at least
That's a
at least-
racial
lean in.
epithet.
I want to just say,
buddy.
at least 57% of it, okay, is the Italian at the door. Okay,
Yeah, I know.
sweet lord,
Yeah.
this fool
I-
is slurping ramen and opening cans of his
I know.
drink. He's
Mixer
swear to God, I
board.
mean,
We won't always need his apartment.
I mean, I'm just. This is insane. This is insane.
I wouldn't have it any other way. Everybody has a thing, and ours.
Ours
is
You
is
know,
being
we're all
broke.
Why don't we just
We're all
open that?
broke.
Why don't we just open that door and show the toilet so we can just tell everybody where this is headed?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I
Good
mean,
God.
it's perfect. I feel
Oh,
like
heavens.
high budget things that are good
Right.
to look at are the norm on YouTube.
So,
And so
we
if-
should be as low
Right.
budget.
Let's be as low
different
budget as possible.
This
It's
is
a
not a
high-budget
table. This is a
boring.
blanket.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
that,
Exactly.
I bought
we
at
have
Target.
we have character on this show.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
The
Back to what you were saying.
Who was the developer who like their whole staff just quit? It was an indie developer. They were pretty big. It started-
Annapurna.
Annapurna.
Annapurna?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
I
happened
heard
this
about
week.
that. That did
Yeah.
happen.
I think, or
they're a
maybe
It
movie.
happened
They're a movie
recently.
studio that had.
Did they make Stray, or was that
They
a
did
different
make
company?
Stray. They did make Stray.
And
got
that game
nominated
did,
for Game
that,
of the
Yeah, as I
Year,
said,
and
that
they
game
just
did
walked out.
gangbusters, which I played that game. That is a game
Yeah.
that I have played.
Yeah.
Stray.
I played Stray,
I like cats.
and I did not enjoy it, but I did play
I feel
it.
like it
You know,
spawned because I've seen several other games,
Just cat games.
like where you just play as like a cat, and I feel like Stray just like made people go like, oh yeah, people like cats.
Yeah. There's a game called Big Kitty in the City or something.
Big kitty, little city, kitty, big city.
Little Kitty, Big City. That's it.
Little
That's a
city,
better version.
big
Big kitty.
kitty.
Now
You're
that-
just like
now
a
that's an
massive
exciting game.
lion running
For the
around
record,
a
I
town
did-
in Wyoming,
for the record,
killing
I did
everyone.
not say. I did not say Little City. I just said Big Kitty in the
And then
city.
you
Big kitty in the city, which
Yeah.
again implies
I'm
that this
proud-
is an unusually large cat.
I'm proud
which
of
is,
myself for remembering
Well,
that it
I
was
mean,
big and
listen,
kitty
I don't think that in
something.
concept that's too bad. Imagine like Clifford the big red dog, but it's a cat.
No, I
and
It
actually
would
he's,
love
kill
that,
everyone.
yeah.
And
Clifford
he's-
is
but
only
he's-
non-violent because he's a
he's
dog.
He's a
Yeah,
friendly
right.
dog. But that's the thing. Imagine if there was a big giant cat and
Yeah.
you were terrorizing a city.
Yeah, its name is like
pretty
Lucifer,
good.
the big
I was
blue
kind
cat.
Of,
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
kind
so
of
that'd be
thinking
interesting.
of a fat cat from the Rescue Rangers.
Thank you,
That's
Ethan.
what I
Yeah,
was-
that's
Fat
also
cat is
that's
the
really
big
what I
cat.
meant.
Fat Cat is a
Cat,
mob
Big
boss and
Kitty,
definitely kills a lot of people.
Little City.
That's what I.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so moving on from the news. Anybody?
Since it will not be topical by the time this goes live
no,
in
no.
11
Maybe
weeks.
I'll get it out this week.
Nope,
We'll
you
see.
won't.
Well, I can open us up today if you'd like.
Yeah, Ethan.
What
do you got
as
for us?
always, I bring options. So, would you guys like to talk about something I'm very passionate about,
Mhm.
very interested about,
Right.
or somewhat of a controversy that's going on right now?
Ooh.
Controversy gets
Controversy's
clicks.
tasty. It's tasty.
You know, and we can put a
Are there any
thumbnail.
controversies that you're
Put it-
passionate about?
Put it
right
to
now?
a vote. Put it to a vote. Ty, what do you vote for?
I gotta go controversy. I'm
What do you
I'm a
vote
basic
for?
V.
Well, because I want the thumbnail of Mario with his like ears bleeding and him screaming in pain, and so we can do a controversy,
So it's what
to
you're
get people to
passionate
click.
about.
You know?
My vote's irrelevant. Controversy.
Controversy. Okay, so this week there has been a little bit of controversy around the game Helldivers 2. And
Okay.
it kind of brought me back to it, so I got back to thinking
That
about
game
it.
still exists.
This is the thing I was going to talk to you guys about
The controversy is that people are saying like, oh, they just dropped a mega good making patch, and is it enough?
Yes. So they
made it good. That was I'm not good at talking language. You guys don't know this, but I'm actually Chinese.
It is a patch.
All right, it is offensive if you critique my English.
Oh God, here you go. Just cut that out. Just cut it out. Just cut that. That is not making it in. And
go
wow.
Ethan.
So yeah,
break down this controversy.
So a couple months ago, the Helldivers had this huge patch, and it caused them. I don't think there's ever been a moment so disastrous in like a game's life cycle, maybe ever.
Yeah.
To go from this giant fan base where people would like play the game, eventually, like bounce off of it into another game, and then you'd wind up getting pulled back in. That was the cycle of Helldivers. Was like it was so much fun to play. It was like great chaos. It was very silly, but it wasn't arced toward like being too technical of a game. It was mostly to be fun. A giant monster appears not to be like hyper difficult to defeat, but to cause insanity to happen.
Yeah.
Then they had several patches in a row, each one trying to like big air quotes balance the game, and it kind of each one was draining the fun away. And eventually it got to where it was like everyone has to run the same set of gear at high level because there's only a few pieces of gear that even do anything anymore. The whole weapons were basically worthless because they were over optimized to be like overbalanced. And the game lost 70% of its player base in 2 months, which is massive. That is like a massive crash.
Yeah.
And they started trying to like big air quotes fix it. And the lead developer, I was either the CEO of the company or the lead developer, kept going in these circular patterns of like, well, we're gonna like add in a new weapon or balance it more or change the this or that, and it was like they've missed the point. It was almost what I was talking about last week, where it's like they thought the point of the game was to like be a technically balanced shooter, and the actual point of the game was for like insanity to incur. Right, like it was never a well balanced game,
right? Ever.
At its height, it was utter nonsense that just kept getting more and more chaotic. But that the CEO left, or head developer. I'm sorry, so bad.
He is the CEO. He is still at the company. But he lost his position as CEO. He changed positions to like a something to do with like the money side of it.
Weird. So he stepped down, and they start trying to take it in a new direction. And just recently, they released a huge patch to try and course correct. But the question is like, when you have a game that is almost like a flavor of the month game, and you mess it up that bad, is there anything you can do to course correct at that point? Is there anything you can do to like salvage it? Obviously, I know the answer is like the upper answer is like, well, anything's possible.
Sure.
But in the realm of reasonable, it feels like,
or like historically,
is that, I mean, how do you salvage something when you lose 70% of your player base?
I mean,
you don't.
You don't.
All right, moving on.
The word I would use kind of critically is salvage, like how much, because when you think of salvaging, you don't think of restoring, right? You think of just like pulling up what sank, and hopefully you get some back. The big question is, I don't know how much you could salvage. Like, will it ever go back to like the phenomenon? I don't think so. I don't think it can. Helldivers, like everyone, a dude I was working with, I was a truck driver at the time, and I was the one of my trainers was talking about Helldivers, and he's like an older guy, and it blew up. But then, like, you're right, there came a point where he was just done, and like he didn't want to play it anymore, and he thought the updates were dumb, and he never you're never getting that guy back, because he's not following Helldivers' development cycle. He's not like keeping up with these updates. So you had him. We talked last week about the blue ocean market the casuals, the people who are not us, listening to gaming podcasts and making a gaming podcast. Those people, you got to get them with commercials and with hype and with like momentum. And I think once you lose them, you've lost them.
It's funny because you mentioned that, because at the same time Helldivers was becoming, reaching its popularity, that was like concurrent with Lethal Company, which basically has never missed. Lethal Company, he was just like, this is supposed to be silly nonsense. If you think the controls are bad, that's kind of the point, right? Like, it's supposed to look like an old janky video game, and you're supposed to not feel like you're supposed to feel like this deck is stacked against you when you play Lethal Company. That's the point.
Right.
And he never lost, the developer of it never lost sight of what it was.
Right.
People have now just like play that for their whole, they make whole like YouTube channels about just playing that game, and people play it all really the time
big
still
on Twitch and
stuff.
Yeah.
It's one of those games where it's like, with the handful of updates they've had, with even just like with the quality of the game, it's fun to just hop back in it. If you have friends who played it before and you just shoot them up and say, hey guys, we should play some Lethal Company, they'll be excited to play it. But like, there were mountains of people that played Helldivers, and if you tell them, hey, they fixed it, it doesn't like seem to work on a lot. Like, most people are just like, moved on.
The moment's over. I'm of two minds. I'm definitely of two minds about this. On the one hand, everybody loves a good redemption story. I went back and gave No Man's Sky a chance, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Got a lot of fun out of that game.
I've heard that it's really good.
But I don't think this kind of game can be a No Man's Sky situation where it gets back to its popularity. I don't think Helldivers will ever get back to that. On the other hand, I am willing to like give something like that a try just to see if I have fun with it. But I don't think it'll ever be like super relevant again. I think that because it was a game of the moment, and things of the moment, once that moment is past.
I think that the problem is that we live in a nightmare world where things are effectively a meme, right? Where it's like you have these games which trend and then they fade so quickly, right? Where it's like, I feel like longevity has drastically been affected by the culture surrounding all this, because I mean, part of it is that there's so many games, to be fair, where it is easy to lose track of things, and things fluctuate pretty massively as far as player bases. So like, can they recover? Maybe not. If they can do something to attract people's attention again, honestly, I think people have a short memory. And if you play to that, you can be like, look at this silly thing we're doing, and people will not care about any controversy that existed prior, because they will just be, playing it because it's a TikTok famous.
It's funny because like,
they could get
actually
their like sustaining people back.
Right before it crashed, it actually really picked up because they released a base defense mode, which turned the whole game on its head.
Yeah.
Like, the game had always been like, you're
super
going
fun
towards something. This one was, you got like 3 or 4 minutes to just set up your defenses, decide whether or not you want to close gates now or wait till later. And you would like, that was really fun. And then as they over optimized it and tried to overbalance it, that mode became pointless to play, because you had to run the same set of gear, and you had to play so carefully, because the second something went wrong, it'd all fall apart. And the release of that defense mode actually got a big surge of players. It's probably the reason why it was such a massive exodus afterwards. Was there was a massive like a group of people coming into the game right before that. So they did kind of what you said, is that like they introduced something new.
Yeah.
They kind of thought outside of the box, and added something that was highly requested.
I honestly don't think that it needs to even be something that's good or anticipated. Honestly, if you have a funny meme dance at this point and it gets popular on a social media site of some kind, you could have a massive player base, right?
Yeah.
Just
Among
from the
Us
fact that
was
people
just built off of the fact that people were playing it on Twitch.
I obviously
Over a year
the
after it
pandemic
came out.
situation affected Among Us's player base, but
Yeah.
I feel like if Among Us had not been a funny meme game, it would not have done as well, even during the pandemic. I mean, I do think that's the majority of it, is that it was everyone was isolated.
Among Us had this advantage of, before the pandemic, games like you could. Among Us was out since like 2018, 2019.
I don't honestly know.
But before that, it was you played it with whoever you could get, and the reason that it became so much more fun during the pandemic is your coolest, funniest, and closest friends were now all willing to play things online
because they
and they now all had time to play things online, so you could play with the people you actually enjoy playing games with a lot.
Well, I mean, so 2018,
even ones who weren't good at video games.
Among Us comes out, no one cares, and then a global pandemic happens.
And when did it come out?
Well, I believe it was in August of 2018. We don't need to ask him.
Point is that
was June 15th.
2018.
I was really
That's really integral information that we have. So the point is, nobody cares about it, and then suddenly, it gets noticed, and people are isolated, and they start playing it. It was a lot of factors that went into Among Us. With Helldivers, obviously that came out
earlier this year.
Earlier this year. Yeah. So we haven't or Helldivers
late last year
or Helldivers
2,
right? That I don't think isolation led to that being popular. No. I think it's because it was a lot of it is the meme.
It was
Helldivers is very much a TikTok famous game, YouTube famous, Twitch famous.
A lot of people that I talked to found it because of Starship Troopers, which sounds weird because they have nothing to do with each other.
Oh, because of the Twitter discourse.
They're inspired by each other.
Yeah,
but they were inspired by the same work.
Well, I was going to say, Starship Troopers is definitely not inspired by Helldivers.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, they were inspired by the same work.
Yeah, they're inspired by...
more pedantic.
By Starship Troopers. Yeah, the book Starship Troopers. Yeah. But my thing is like, there was Twitter discourse. There was Twitter discourse around it, and it became,
It was also that it was in this long line of flavor of the month games.
Yeah.
Those games would tend to be literally last for a month, and Helldivers had some staying power. And so it lasted. Its first run, big like burst of popularity, lasted for more than a month, and then it kept coming back into relevance.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't put the game down because 2 weeks later, a different friend of yours would be like, I just got into this game and it's fantastic. Will you play it with me? It was like a big event.
Hang on, Michael B. saying pause.
Can I help you?
He's sick. Get him some milk.
We'll clip it.
What if we put you in a hazmat suit and then and soundproof the room?
Sounds like maybe they can use some momentum, but they'll never get back to the high.
Well, again, I don't know if this is really a strange thing. I think that games literally have such short longevity at this point that, like, the idea that Helldivers was ever going to maintain its player base is like an impossibility at this point.
It was ebbing and flowing was the problem. The thing that broke...
It didn't have to crash,
It crashed. 70% of its players left, and it can't even sort of get them back anymore. Yeah. And it's directly
failure.
Well, it's not because people lost interest in the game. It's because the way they made so many changes to the way the game played that were trying to make it like I don't want to say legitimate or competitive because it's neither of those things, but it's like they were trying to take the difficulty and make it like I don't know. They were trying to find some way of making it more like logically difficult, but it means everything became armor piercing, and they nerfed armor piercing a ton, and to the point where you just felt like you were just, you felt like you were firing with squirt guns, and it became really unsatisfying. You've talked about this before, Devin, where you say like a platformer needs to be really fun to move around in.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
In Helldivers was kind of a different way. It was the guns all need to like feel really satisfying to use.
Yeah.
So like when you had the shotgun and it would like make a loud noise and it would shake your character a little bit and it would like blow like the entire head up of the bug that was attacking you. It was very funny and very satisfying. And it was the same for like the big giant guns where they were kind of silly and sometimes you would hold the button too long and it would blow you up. Or like the airstrikes where we just kept getting napalmed by a friend of ours. Those used to feel really satisfying when you got them to work. Now with that update, everything became really technical. It's like I did an orbital strike cannon, which used to be this hilarious event where your cruiser up in space locks a laser on the biggest enemy and then fires a cannon from space. Yeah. Now it was like, okay, we need 2 of these because the first one's just going to knock 1 plate of armor off and the second one's going to deal 80% damage and then someone has to fire a rocket. And it was like, man, I'm having to do math in Helldivers, the dumbest video game I play. It was never a smart game. It was a fun game. And they kept trying to lean more into like smart. and like trying to make it like too much strategy.
I would love to see what the numbers for the player base was on Among Us and what the drop off was, because I feel like when you could now once again go to the Arby's without risk of a horrible respiratory illness.
Can you?
The appeal,
even now,
a digestive illness will still kill you, but not a respiratory.
Oh, I see.
That moment, I think that Among Us's player base probably dropped 90%.
It's true. I feel like the difference is that Among Us,
that was out of their control though.
Well, that's what
that's not because of something they did. The Helldivers developers like released a patch, was wildly unpopular. Instant,
and they doubled down on that patch. That's why the CEO had to step down. Is they like doubled down on like, no, we're improving the game. We're making it better. If anything,
Among Us has done a good job of like making Among Us VR and like doing collaborations to stay relevant, despite its uncontrollable circumstances. Yeah. No, that is I didn't even know when you said Helldivers
I don't
back,
keep
I'm
up
like,
with it.
Holy crap.
You pointed out that this is a lot of things now don't have a lot of longevity.
Yes.
And so when one of them comes along and it seems like it has some staying power and then it loses
that's disappointing.
It's very disappointing.
That's really disappointing. Yeah.
I had to tell some of my friends recently where I was just like, guys, do not make me download one more video game. I swear to God.
It's too depressing.
I will come over and I will pull the hard drives out of your computer. I cannot download another. I would get into a game and play it maybe twice, and then my friends would be like, hey, let's play this other survival crafter that looks the exact same. And I'd say, no, I cannot download any more.
I can't do this anymore.
I've definitely been,
things just don't
side note, I've been itching for like another multiplayer game to dive into really deeply.
You want me to download something new? Is what
I mean, recently the three of us have been playing Tribes of Midgard, and that's the closest I've come. But it's still that itch. I think it's just the Monster Hunter itch because it's coming up. And
I'm itching because I have Lyme disease.
Anyways, who's got another question?
A question?
Or who's got another topic?
What's the next topic?
Question. It could be a question. It can be a subject. Ty, Quinn.
Okay. I'll give you one.
Do you need more time to bake it? Because I'll say something. I've got one.
Feel free.
Okay.
I don't need more time to bake it, but you can.
No, go ahead then. Go ahead.
We're getting so much less bang for our buck. And this is everything. Yeah. This is everything. We're getting less bang for our...
talking, but he's not using his microphone. That's weird.
That's
I work so hard
for a video game.
This is the 100% correct direction you're going here. We pay $70 for our video games, okay?
Right.
Which I know people will say like, well, buddy, account for inflation on those Atari carts. I don't want to hear about that. I don't understand inflation. I don't believe in it. If you make a house too expensive, I'll steal it.
Have not kept up with inflation, so
video
games can't realistically.
If you make a house too expensive, I'll steal it. If you make a car too expensive, I will steal it. If you make a video game too expensive, it's gone. All right? Easiest thing on the list to steal. Okay? Adoption, if you made me pay for that kid's getting stolen, right? There is nothing you can inflate, okay? A pool.
I gotta introduce you to some
that I can't steal, okay?
Right.
So, but we're getting less bang for our buck because we're now spending more on a video game, and I would argue that video games, because there are a billion of them being released, they don't feel like they have to give you a massive experience with the majority of them.
It's only occasionally worth it, like, to spend. There are some games that I spent $70 on and I played for like 100 hours and I'm like, man, that was great. But then if you also want to sell me a game that's going to be like 20 hours, we need some dynamic pricing here because like I can't pay that 70 for a game that is designed by design very short and not replayable.
Yeah.
You know?
And then the other problem is that our hardware is also not giving us the same bang for our buck. And I know that's maybe a little more controversial because people go, well, but you know, we can do 4K and we can do we can do ray tracing. Let me just explain something to you.
We've become an economics podcast.
This is we've become an economics podcast.
This is our hard left.
Let me just explain something to you.
Point on this when you're ready.
4K, okay? I want you to think about this real quick.
Right.
4K, 2K, okay, not okay. All right? Let me just explain something.
He's lost his mind.
No. Let me explain something. What resolution did the PS3 put out?
The PS3.
It was like 720.
720p,
30 frames.
720p.
Very few
30
games
frames.
actually reach that. But
Okay,
yeah,
but you know,
I think it could output at 1080.
Okay, but so you got.
You don't have to eat it. You
this
can
is-
just talk into it.
I enjoy eating microphones.
Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum,
Very
ba-dum,
unsanitary.
ba-dum, ba-dum. Anyways, as I was saying,
Horrifying.
okay, you've got a console that cannot output at 4K. Okay, but you know what it could do?
What?
It had a CD tray.
Yeah.
It could play Blu-rays. It could play your music. Okay, it had a free online at the time. Okay,
Very briefly.
what are we doing now? What are we doing? Okay, where we have to, and also it was the first thing that had a remote play interface with your
PS Vita.
PS Vita, right? So I'm just saying, you know, we're talking about
the first and last.
an exceptional,
Or no, it was
and tell me
It's
how
yes,
much,
it's not the last.
and the PSP. No, but tell me how much was the PlayStation 3 at launch in US?
It was $599.
We looked it up. They announced it at that. They slashed that. It was $499.
That's right. Okay, that's the key point. When that actually hit the market,
I
you were
think
paying.
they slashed it a few months after it launched.
Not according to the chart I looked up, which was on Wikipedia.
Okay,
Well,
This-
then
that
it was
College
This is my
professor was
original
rolling around in his
so
grave.
you've got
yeah.
about $500. You get a Blu-ray player in a time when Blu-ray players were
Sure.
not the most common. You get a Blu-ray player. It's a music player. It's got online services. It's got remote play if you have a PSP. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Does anyone even care that this thing is going to play at 720? No. You're getting an incredible bang for your buck. Okay,
Sure.
You can get into this blah 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 about all sorts of things. I actually think there was tons of really great games on the PS3.
Yeah.
Point is, if you look at that now, and then you look at what you get with this, with the new PlayStation 5 Pro, and you look at that and what you're getting at launch.
The Pro is
I
insane.
do not care
Like,
that it can run
for me,
ray tracing and this sort of things. It doesn't matter.
To your point, like name for me on your PlayStation 5 exclusives
Mhm.
that make it a
There's
great
so
purchase,
few.
right?
The PS5 generation.
Plenty of
has
great
been so
games coming out,
strange.
and that I've had this argument with people before. They're like, "But
They're
this
all
game
coming to
came out.
PC
This game
now."
came out." I'm like, "Those are all PS4 games that released in year of our Lord 2023."
Yeah, which is crazy.
Name a PS5 exclusive. I can name one, and because I haven't played Astrobot,
I'm
everybody
sure
says
there are
that's
some.
the new
I
one
have
that looks
played it.
great.
It's amazing, yeah.
But Astrobot would be one. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth,
which will be on the PC before too long.
they're
I
timed
think-
exclusives.
So this
but
is-
at least
Returnal
yeah,
it's
is
something.
a PS5
16 was
exclusive.
timed.
Let me just tell you something. If you have
I don't know
timed,
because I don't own it.
if you have the word timed in front of your exclusive,
Yeah.
it's not an exclusive.
That is true.
True.
But the,
Okay,
the thing
true.
is,
So,
even Sony
yeah.
first party,
Astrobot's
Spider-Man.
definitely
Spider-Man was the
exclusive,
other
though.
one that I wasn't thinking of.
Okay, yeah,
Even
sure.
Sony first party isn't producing that many PS5 exclusive games. It's like,
Mm.
Yeah, no.
Why
Well,
don't they just make software?
What do you
Sony?
mean?
No,
well,
because
they make their money
Sony
on
makes-
hardware.
yeah,
Their
Sony makes
software is
tons
the
of money on-
problem. Honestly, I think
no,
what you're
I think their hardware is also a
the
problem.
hardware
but-
is a problem, but it's a problem
What if they
because
pull a
there's no
Sega?
software to
Well,
justify
because,
it.
And just
because
go to-
here's I mean the issue is also if you want to look at the eras that these are in, how replicatable are these products with PCs at the same price range?
That's the
because
danger
we've
that
got-
Sony is running now.
We've gotten to the
Mhm.
point where for the same price
Yeah.
you can build a PS4 Pro or PS5 Pro, right?
Yeah.
For about the same price. You can have a relatively
the-
good PC for that price.
You can get a PC that can do what it can do for less. That was the
Yeah.
big
And
argument.
so this
And
is
that's
the
been
thing.
a meme for a while, but honestly, it's never really been true. PC gaming has always been a little more expensive than console gaming.
Yeah, it has.
But somebody
I
just
think we're-
posted the build, and it was like the number one most upvoted thing on I think Sony's
Yeah.
Reddit. Was the build that is better than the PS5 at like $80 less.
Yeah, well,
Well,
and this is the problem.
Even
So-
if it's a little more,
PS5 Pro
you
specifically.
get.
Yeah.
If you build a PC and let's say that instead of the $700, it's like $900. That extra $200 is like going into the fact that you have a PC. Like
you can
that
do
it's not
so
just-
much
you
stuff.
Well,
can
yeah.
edit videos. You can watch YouTube. You can do all kinds of stuff that a console doesn't give you.
Oh yeah, well you can buy a
watch
you
YouTube on the
you
console.
realize you can buy
I don't
a
think you can on the PlayStation. I don't think they have.
yeah,
do they have YouTube?
Yeah,
app?
they have a YouTube app. But here's the thing I'm getting at is that with a PC, right, I can build and I can put, because it's a PC, I can put a Blu-ray disc reader
Yeah, true.
for very cheap in our modern market.
True.
Now it's not going to be like the best Blu-ray disc player ever. It's going to be
Yeah.
some kind of cheaper product, but for a relatively low price, you can buy these now.
Yeah.
I want you to think about when the PS3 came out. If you were to build a PC, you're going to run into
Impossible.
you're not going to be able to afford a Blu-ray drive.
But also,
with this.
everything wasn't
You're
coming
not-
out on Where's
And that's
PC
the
Metal
big-
Gear Solid 4?
That's what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
And the big problem is that you're not going to be able to play all the same titles.
No.
What are we getting
Or
now?
even like the Wii, where you're getting a unique experience you can't get
like
on
game.
PC.
Yeah, game consoles have often been kind of high in terms of price for what their hardware actually gives you.
Right.
Sure.
But they justify it because you say, well, but look at all these games. And I think that like with the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4, the Wii, the Switch, it's really easy to look at that library and go, look at all these games that I can't get anywhere legally else.
Yeah.
But with the we enter the PS5 era, and all of a sudden they're like 2 you can't get elsewhere for cheaper.
No,
Like-
the PS5 does have.
And Xbox has a worse problem.
Like a
Xbox has 0.
If you look up PS5 exclusives, if we had someone who could look up PS5 exclusives for us,
That would be great.
but
I would love that.
I also guarantee. I guarantee you, there's more than we think there are, but they're
Yeah.
not.
No, I'm
gonna
sure.
Be like
I'm sure
great
that there are
games.
plenty. But what I'm saying is that there are plenty of exclusives on the Dreamcast. In fact, quite a lot. And my thing is the Dreamcast is also a music player,
So
Yeah.
and it can
I
connect to
have
the internet.
I have a
Time exclusive.
Well, we don't need
Well, we
timed
don't need those.
exclusives.
Let's not talk about time right now.
Yeah, that's not useful to us
I
here.
have a
Hit
little
us,
bit of a
Ethan.
different
Let's hear it.
thought where you said, we're not getting as much, bang for our buck anymore.
Yeah.
Because I agree with everything you guys are saying, but I also think that there's another element to it that we're not always able to like see and at the same time when we're looking at like all the things you guys have been talking about. There's this other element that it's hard to focus on both at the same time is, when you say like, it's a timed exclusive, right? It doesn't count because it's
Yeah.
going to come to PC. It's going to come
Yep.
to all these other things. There was this time not that long ago where it was experientially different to play a Dreamcast game than to play the port of it on a GameCube.
Good point.
And
Okay, yeah.
I love this
hardware used to just have this flavor to it,
Absolutely.
this diversity
Yeah.
to it.
This is such
You
a
were
good
just talking about the
topic.
Wii, being this unique experience.
Yeah.
You can. There's ports of Wii games on Switch, and you can boot up an emulator. But at the day and age, that is a flavor of game. When you
Yeah.
say Wii game, I don't even think Nintendo. I think the Wii.
That era. Yeah.
It's not the Wii U, and it's
No.
not the 64, and it's not the GameCube, and it's definitely not the Dreamcast, and definitely not the PlayStation.
Yeah.
And that used to be kind of a positive thing. Dreamcast
Yeah.
games had unbelievable audio quality on the Dreamcast. Like the audio quality was insane. And then you had like GameCube games where like there's the horsepower that console had for its day
Yeah.
and age was crazy. Xbox had ridiculous frame rates, and PlayStation 2 had a really good processing. It'd have a bunch of like run Battlefront 2 better than a lot of the other consoles could do.
Hardware used to be so specific that the way you made a game, most people were doing the same way.
And
Is
and
this
also
effect-
there was like flavor to the consoles. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where it was like
Yeah.
when you start up a Dreamcast and you click that button and it's clicky and the CD tray
Yeah.
clicks and it's the sound, the experience, right? When it starts up, I love the startup
Memory
animation
cards
on
were
all those
cool.
old things.
Yeah.
I mean, even the PS3 startup was really nice. The band tuning, all that. I feel like every console I look at now is like a
Feels
incredibly
homogenized.
incredibly unsatisfying
I
to
see.
use.
It's funny that you brought up how to build an $80 cheaper PlayStation with computer parts. I see every console now, for the with some very small except with like the Switch being the exception.
Yep.
I see the consoles now. When I look at them, I just see like, oh, there is an annoying, uncustomizable PC. I look at a game and I go,
Yeah,
this
and
game will be really cool, when I can mod it.
And I personally, I don't
And
find that the Switch is particularly satisfying. I feel like, you hit a very unclicky little button to start it up, and it just kind of opens from a sleep mode.
It has a weird menu, too.
It has
a very ugly menu.
3DS had such a good menu.
Yeah, the Switch's menu,
no folders.
Wii, all
the
that.
Switch's menu is like really snappy. Like if you go back to like Wii U or 3DS and you hit the home button, you forgot that it took like a few seconds. The Switch is like instant.
Does the Switch have themes?
No.
No, and the 3DS
it has light
had
and dark.
Okay, see, this is what I'm talking about. I'm like, you look
the
at this.
The 3DS had folders and themes.
It had folders and themes
I don't know
and all
what
sorts
happened.
of stuff. But there you go. It's not just that the.
But at least I think what he's getting at with the Switch is that like at least there are games that Nintendo are trying to make the cost of that console somewhat justifiable.
It has identity.
It has an identity.
Yeah.
There are games that are Switch games. I don't know that anything else feels unique.
I think I've talked with you. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast, but I know I've talked with you all about it in person. Is that while I like a lot of the games on the Switch has been to me a disappointing era in gaming, especially because they got rid of their home console and they've merged it into their handheld, and ultimately they produce not quite half, a little more than half of the amount of games they used to, because they used to produce handheld games which were cheaper and you could get more. So volume of games, Nintendo went down a lot when the Switch came out.
Compared,
and
overall,
the 3DS is my favorite console of all time, and I love
it's hard to beat. It's a really,
like you said, really clicky handles, really good identity. The Switch still has a lot of identity. I'm worried that here's the thing, when we talk about bang for our buck, I'm worried that they're about to show off Switch 2 and it's going to be here's a slightly stronger Switch.
Yeah. No, I worry about that too.
I am worried, at the Nintendo geek in me, because the rhetoric, even from Nintendo fans that you see online, is they just do it again. Like just give me another Switch. Mm-hmm. And I feel like an old school Nintendo nerd where like I love the Switch and I would love to have more of it and it would be successful probably. But I'm kind of itching for that mix up. For that that weird and that wacky that Nintendo usually does.
Well, but here's
what I'll say though. I want to say this about kind of from a different angle. I've always had trouble with the discussion around value because it's almost a pointless debate in the sense of it's literally custom to everyone. So if I played a game and it was the most fantastic 10 hours of my life, how do I what value do I place on that? Well, there's no amount of money that I place on that. Like it was worth it.
The Outer
100%.
Wilds is like an hour long and people say it's one of the best experiences playing.
What about a game that's 100 hours that I put 100 hours in, but it was just fine. It was just like a distraction. It was something that I put a podcast on and I played it for 100 hours. It's like, okay, they both cost $70. I could if I was gun to my head, I have to pick one. I would pick the 10 amazing hours. Yeah. So that's the problem is like where one person says like,
But one metric is easier to measure because I can measure the number of hours it takes to beat this game, but I can't measure how much you're going to enjoy it versus how much I'm going to enjoy it.
And also,
not you to you. I'm saying how much did you enjoy those 100 hours? Versus a game that took you 20, but you had more fun.
What I'm saying
20.
is when you're pricing something, you can't
that's
measure the
issue.
metric of enjoyment
because
you can measure the metric of like content.
To some
extent, real quick, there is a metric of like sometimes a game is a short game, but the production value is so high it costs a ton to release.
Right.
But like, so you could go like, well, we'll adjust a game's price based on how much it cost us to make it.
Sure.
So if it cost us only a little bit to make this game, regardless of its length, we release it at a lower price. If we put a lot of time and effort and our own money into it, then we have to release it at a higher price.
Sure.
It makes sense. But homogenizing it all to like this little indie budget game coming out at $60, that indie budget game now doesn't stand a chance because no one's going to buy it. Except enthusiasts.
Yeah, sure.
And you hurt that game's chance. I think the reason the PC market space and games like Stardew Valley or something can blow up is because Stardew Valley wasn't $60 when it came out.
Yeah.
But haven't consoles done that? I mean,
in the distant past, but it has kind of been going away. The prices are getting higher and higher and higher.
Prices are getting higher, and I mean, creating a $70 standard is crazy. That's insane. Because again, the big problem is, once again, the PC is the element here that is most key, and I'm not saying this is a good thing, because obviously I wish that this was different. But the fact of the matter is that when did the PS3 come out? 2007 to somewhere,
something like
around
06 or something.
Somewhere in that realm. So 06. So you got, in 2006 it comes out. In 2006 you can't replicate that with a PC. Now you can replicate so much with a PC. Let's talk about the Switch. If you can dump those carts onto your PC, if you buy a legitimate Switch copy, it is so easy at this point. There are devices directly made for it.
It's very hard to find a handheld device that can play Switch games at any kind of appreciable rate that isn't
getting a lot better.
That isn't exorbitantly more expensive than the Switch.
That the exorbitantly expensive part is the issue, because
the closest right now is that the one that has kind of like Joy-Cons built in them. What's it called?
I mean, honestly, I've seen a few.
Is it the Legion?
The Legion Go.
I've seen a few play Switch games, and depending on which Switch game, some of them run it pretty darn well.
Oh yeah, I mean, like some of them.
But the prices
are
crazy.
Tears of the Kingdom on those.
But here's what I'm saying is that
Lenovo.
I don't think that everyone is using the Switch as a mobile device.
No, that's true.
Because here's the thing: if you want to play Switch games at a greatly discounted price, okay, the solution is that you can play it on a PC. The cost is that you can't play it on the go. Okay?
Sure.
And the issue is that I'm not saying that this is a good thing. What I'm saying is that this is a problem that did not exist in 2006, and it does now, right? The idea of emulating a current generation console in 2006 is impossible.
Yeah.
That is such a big reach. So
the Wii got cracked pretty quick.
We now have a factor that it's just...
That's true.
I don't know how they're going to overcome this.
There's also a cost factor with something like the Switch, because emulating the Switch even as a home console on a $400 PC is basically impossible. Very hard to put together a PC that would... Because when you're emulating something, you got to have so much more hardware resources than what the original thing did, because you're doing a lot of translation of code. Sure. And so, like, you are paying more, but if you're able to pay more, you can actually potentially get an even better experience because you're playing at higher resolutions.
And I think that if you're using like a very lightweight Linux emulator built specific system, it's going to be more expensive, but it's not going to be that much more expensive.
True.
So I think that's a problem. All right,
Ty.
Quinn cannibalized my point, because my point was literally going to be like, can anyone justify to me that it is not like the Dark Ages? I was going to say we'll exclude the Switch, but can anyone tell me that it's not like Dark Ages for
do you want to pick a different
console
one?
gaming?
That's kind of what we just...
That's exactly what we just talked about. So you do yours, and I'm going to think. Okay. I'm going to percolate.
Well,
also, by the way, the answer is yes.
You could borrow mine about the thing that I recently received that is now sitting.
Oh, I could. So I got.
If you really wanted to.
This is a trick. I'm just going to tell a story. I'm not going to ask a question.
Okay, go for it.
That's actually a great point.
Go ahead.
So
it'll save us time anyways.
2 years ago, a composer named Rosen released an album. Ethan really loved it. It was called Shadows of Hyrule. It was remixes of various Zelda music, and not just remixes. Like he recomposed everything. It's really incredible. And he was doing a limited edition vinyl.
Just for music nerds, he did remixed arrangements. He didn't compose any.
Remixed arrangements.
So he did compose some for Shadows. So
there was original tracks on Shadows.
Oh, there was
he's done
tracks.
A Majora's Mask one called Children of Termina, and
Great
then
album.
he did 2 Ballads of Hyrule. His first one was called Sins of Hyrule, which is Twilight Princess and Wind Waker themed.
Okay.
And very little bit of Breath of the Wild. He then did Time Once Lost, which was an EP. And then he released Shadows of Hyrule, which is his own compositions and remixes, like recompositions of Zelda music. So it has a little bit of his own music in there.
I'm sorry to interrupt. For the camera, so that everyone can hear this, I have got to drop a Mondo Duke.
Welcome to the Power Up Brothers podcast, where everything's. I went back too far. No. Yeah. Anyway, so Rosen puts out this album. I see he's doing a limited EP release, and Ethan's impossible to shop for, and I think I've got it. I can get him a gift. I'm gonna buy this crazy expensive vinyl set of the entire album for Shadows of Hyrule. I talked to my mom, and she wanted to go half on it because
your mom,
not yours,
not ours,
just my mom,
our mother.
Talk to our mother, and she's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And so we bought it, and we weren't going to tell him about it, and then we saw that it was delayed, and so we were like, okay, well, we got to tell him about it because it came with raw digital audio files, the like FLAC files, I think. Okay. And we're like, I want to give them at least that part so we can have really high quality audio. So we told him about it, and we showed him, and Ethan was very excited.
Over the moon, yeah. And it also has some of the best art of any.
The artwork in it is terrifically good.
Oh, sorry. I wonder who did the art, because it is. I would like to find that person. All of the art for those covers.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely incredible. But then it just never came in. And I kept emailing the company, and at first I got a like very polite little, we're looking into, fulfilling. And then I saw that the thing was delisted from the company, and you couldn't find any information about it anywhere online. Yeah. And I was like, hey, this is real suspicious, even though that it was like, I forget where it was, but it was like a well-known record production company for smaller artists, right, that produce limited edition vinyls. And so this went on for a year and a half. And about 6 months ago, I sent the last email to him in which I was like, if you guys can't fulfill my order, I'm just going to have to ask for a refund because like this was not an insignificant amount of money for me.
A lot longer than
I was so frustrated. So we all kind of just forgot about it after that. I never heard back. And Ethan and I are sitting in our living room talking about something. And I see that the mail's been delivered. Ethan brings it in. And we're just talking. And I open one of the boxes. And inside is that limited edition vinyl, brand new. It doesn't have a studio address on it. It's just a guy. The address. And
I hope you save that address because we're going to your house, buddy.
Fully 2 years after I had ordered it. We looked it back up. Fully 2 years after the album came out and I had ordered it.
Listen, Ralph,
it finally came in.
Listen, Ralph. All right, buddy. All right? You have a thing called a responsibility to the buyer that you didn't fulfill. And guess what? We're coming to get you. We're coming to get you. You better be ready, Ralph. Your mic on? Probably not. We're coming to get you,
great that
Ralph.
His mic
wasn't on. That's absolutely hysterical.
It's a good thing I didn't say anything of any particular importance.
No, you never did.
Ralph, buddy, we've got your address. We're coming to you. Your gas is ass. Your grass is back. Okay?
He's peeking.
You know what I'm saying? We're coming. We're coming for you.
So yeah, that's just my incredible
awesome.
Story.
Wow, 2 years.
That's kind of similar to something that happened to me with the game Clive and Wrench, an indie game.
That's not a real game.
I
don't believe you. I don't believe you. That's not a real game.
I pre-ordered it in 2020 when pre-orders went up, and I pre-ordered the special pin edition. And then that edition went away, and the company that I ordered it from apparently didn't exist. It was a British company called like The Gamer or something. Couldn't find their website anymore.
A famous British game magazine.
Yeah,
it was like a lazy scam.
Let me just say this right now. This is a lazy scam, and you fell for it.
And I was like, holy crap! What the heck? The game came out, I think, either late last year or early this year.
Okay.
And I was like, oh yeah, I should get that game like legit eventually, an indie game. I was like, it's fine. And then one day in the mail. Clive and Wrench Collector's Edition. It's not pin edition anymore. It doesn't have pins, which is why the SKU went away, I guess. But it came with like cards and like an art book and everything. And on my order, it says ordered in like, I forget, July of 2020. And here it is, 2024. And it just shows up.
That's insane.
The gamer was real. They just wanted to seem fake.
That's insane.
Well, let's talk about Rosen a little bit.
Yes. Can I hijack your section for just a moment to rant about how amazing this album is?
Yeah, he's a great. He makes great remixes because he adds his own kind of flair to it.
He separates himself. I love listening to like, you know, orchestrated remixes of video game music. There's some really amazing stuff. Rosen is in a league of his own. And he's in a league of his own for two critical reasons, in my opinion. And the first is he is an amazing composer. His original works are phenomenal.
Yeah.
There's a really good little documentary where they interviewed him and went through his like process, and it is unbelievable. And he's got a wide range of interests. He released an album that was all Ghibli music right before Shadows of Hyrule. But the second reason is he understands his topics so well.
He captures the feel really, really well. Even though it's a remix and it's a different version, he still gets the feel of it.
Right? Yeah. He has a really, really amazing song in Ballads of Hyrule where he combines the grandma's music from Wind Waker with Fi's theme from Skyward Sword. And the reason he does is because you say goodbye to both of them at the end of their games, their respective games, and there's a thematic connection between the two of them. In Shadows of Hyrule, he combines the Forest Temple with Lanayru Desert from Skyward Sword. So Forest Temple from Ocarina, and because they both use a very similar instrument, the Forest Temple just uses it in like these little like ups and downs, like and the Lanayru Desert uses it in these long pans, but it's the same instrument.
Yeah.
And he combines them together to where it goes up and down as it's going through the Forest Temple, and then it just like swooshes into it out of nowhere. Unbelievable. Having that degree of like knowledge of your subject
is
and you are that talented, the things like the concepts he can bring into something like that is just hard to compare to anyone else. There's lots of people doing other remixes and a lot of them are really talented, but Rosen is just like, man, he's in a league of his own.
I always wanted to throw hands with that grandma from the Wind Waker, and I think part of it is that it could be that even though that grandma doesn't act like my grandma, my feelings of anger are imprinted upon the Wind Waker grandma, right? Just by virtue of her being a grandma, that kind of reminds me.
I'm glad you're talking about Rosen.
And so when
music in general.
Well, what I'm saying is that grandma theme, on the one hand, may sound comforting to you, but it's battle music to me.
Actually, Rosen did the grandma song as a battle. He didn't.
He did not. He did in his latest album. He did do something that made me in Shadows of Hyrule. There's lots of reasons I think it's his best piece of work, but one of the things that, especially to me, it very much is appealing is it has the widest selection of music in any of his themed albums. Like his like Ballads of Hyrule are just every single Zelda game is in there, but in this one it's specifically a themed album. And while it does the original pieces and a little bit of Twilight Princess and a lot of Ocarina, to be fair, it has A Link to the Past for the first time. He's did a 2D Zelda game, so it has a lot of A Link to the Past in it as well.
Which is an easy way to get an Ethan.
You get a thumbs up
immediately. Because it's best. Anyway, all right, baby, let's hear yours.
Okay, so we talk a lot about game preservation on this.
No, we don't.
You
We've
do.
never spoken
Have we? You might have mentioned.
In fact, this is official. We're changing. We're now the Game Preservation Podcast.
Oh, perfect.
Preservation Podcast rolls off the tongue really well. It's alliteration.
It's actually
I like alliteration.
Okay, so anytime a game is brought to a different console, especially older games coming to newer hardware, right? There's a demand from the player base, both fans and newcomers, right? There's a demand to for two things. One, maintain that original game, right? We don't want to play something that's just like you called it this, but it's not actually this, right? And then there's also quality of life. They want quality of life improvements to come with it. However, you can argue that those two things are antithetical to each other, because any quality of life improvement means that it is now different from the original, and you want it to be the same, right? So here's my question to you guys that I'll answer last, but I want to hear from each of you only when I call out your name. That's not real. Actually, it is. I'm making it real right now.
This is your section. Make up the rules.
No,
babe.
Where does the line of quality of life end and altering the game begin for you?
We'll call it. You gotta say it.
Ethan.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I am a little particular. I lean more toward quality of life than I do pure preservation.
Interesting. Okay.
Because like
if you have an example of a game, beautiful. If you don't, that's okay.
So I think we mentioned this last time, is that a company recently brought all the Jurassic Park games to
that was limited run. The guy I talked about going to NOA's headquarters.
Yeah, and like he not only got some of the frame rate problems out of the Super Nintendo version, where the Super Nintendo version had this terrible slowdown in certain scenes. They managed to get that fixed, but they also added in, I think, a mini map. Was something I saw on when I played it. It has like a mini map. The original didn't
it's not fully integrated into the game. When the emulation software itself, you know how you can pull up like a HUD.
Yeah.
It pulls up a HUD, and among the things like that, you have an instruction manual. One of them is just a game map, and it also superimposes your current location. So it's kind of outside of the game, but not really, because it's one click away at any time in the game. So they're trying to walk that line. I think you're talking about with quality of life, but it didn't actually alter the game itself. It's something that's still technically a part of the like overlay, the emulator overlay.
I find it like that. That's one of those things where it's like every time I've ever replayed the Jurassic Park games, I have to have like a strategy guide up next to it because it's so hard to find. Where you're going or where things are at, or like just where you're at in the map is pretty tricky. Yeah. And so sometimes when it streamlines things like that, I really enjoy the streamlining of it. But it is a question that sometimes comes back to that is a question that kind of comes back.
It's okay, but you gotta warn us.
I don't think it's registering. So he's fine.
But yeah, it's this thing where when it's a fine line though, because I think sometimes you can take it so far, put in so many quality of life changes that you're not looking at anything even somewhat similar,
right.
And ultimately any quality of life change you make to the game, other than like the processing, right? Because I think the only games that like struggle with that are like Star Fox, where the processing sped everything up too fast when it worked right.
Yeah.
But other than like processing, like there are parts of slowdown. Anytime you're doing quality of life things, they have to be optional. They have to be optional because otherwise,
all of them, or
they need to, as much as you possibly can. They need to be optional. If there was a controller that no longer exists, you know, and you need to like somehow circumvent that, or you're trying to port a 3DS game and you need to get around the like fact that it was 3D and now it can't be.
Well, what was your question, Michael B?
What do you mean by what? Yeah, that quality of life improvements should be optional? Is that what you're asking? Why?
Or do you want to know what a quality of life improvement is?
Yeah. You can't say to a multiple choice, mother.
Okay.
I mean,
I got this. Yeah. So like quality of life is like a lot of times there were limitations on old games and stuff. No, clearly.
Oh God.
I can't a lot of times there were for any of our listeners who somehow don't know what quality of life means, like our editor doesn't.
What do you prefer?
If you ask a question, you have to keep your mic on.
What do you prefer, apples or oranges? Yep, sure do.
So a quality of life. A lot of times there were things in games that were limitations. That were imposed upon the game maker and not like a choice they made. So like you're playing a game and it has frame rate issues where it like stutters really bad, right? A quality of life update to the game would be to not increase the overall frame rate, but eliminate those stutters so that it plays smoothly through that section, unless it was for some reason intended by the developer to stutter there, right? You're trying to preserve the intent, but you're taking out as many technical hurdles. And in some cases, it's like the old Jurassic Park games can be a little bit frustrating if you don't have a map. And so we would just like have our own maps that we drew, or we would look them up online.
Yeah.
And the emulator has a map built into it. So like that's an example of a quality of life update.
I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I was certain I was right about this. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it was Capcom released a bunch of their old games, and there was or they removed extra lives from them. You just die, you go back to the checkpoint.
Yeah.
And it's because like in modern gaming,
the arcade features are done. We're done with that.
done.
Yeah.
They are rituals that no longer
that.
have a meaning.
Right.
And so they were like, it's way more fun to play Altered Beast when you don't lose 3 times and have to fight the first boss over again.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah,
instead
sure.
of getting
I
too
agree.
far into like
Well,
save
yeah.
stating, which I think is a fine way to get around that, is
Yeah,
just use
save
save
stating
stating.
is an example of
but I
quality
think,
of life.
I
yeah,
think
I
that's
think a
better,
lot of people
though,
that
is
are
to just alter the game
Well,
so that it no longer
here's
requires it.
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, if you're like emulating Banjo-Kazooie, you're
Yeah.
probably putting a code in so that you have infinite lives.
Well,
I'm putting
here's
a code
a
in
great
so I don't have to
example
play
of
you know
it.
what I mean?
Here's what, in
Because
my
the
opinion,
arcade features sucks.
Here's what, in my opinion, is a
It's
great
not-
example
it's
of
not your
quality of
turn.
life. It's my turn right now because I said it
not-
was. Is GoldenEye on both the Xbox Store and on the
Yeah, yeah.
Switch. The downside is the emulator they use on both of those is not very good. So it
Right.
has some
It's not bad.
problems.
It's
Well,
not bad.
yeah.
We're gonna have a whole thing about Switch emulation because it ranges from
This is
very, very
officially
good
Kai's
to
section,
the
right?
worst one, which is the N64 emulator.
No, it's good now. It
the-
was bad at the start. It's good now.
We can't talk about this right now. But the things they did to the actual game, where you can remap your controls, at least on the Switch, and it supports 16:9 widescreen. But again, to Ethan's point, because I love quality of life features, they have to be optional because there's always going to be that guy out there who wants to relive this game as he experienced as a child, jank and all, and that person you're selling it to that that has to be preserved as well, right?
Do either of you have an example of a quality of life that goes beyond quality of life? It's like, now you just changed the game. Now it's not the same game anymore. You just broke it.
Man, there was.
I mean,
I'll
Can
throw.
we pause for just a moment?
Yeah.
I've got something in my eye. I gotta go take a look at.
You're good.
arms up.
We're back.
Praise the Lord. Ty was
yeah.
in the middle of his point, but
Ty
I don't know if I
Oh,
don't.
you
know
can
if-
make me say it. So you asked for an example. Or
Say
you-
it. Say it.
Crystal Chronicles.
Crystal
Oh,
Chronicles.
that's a big one.
Crystal
They-
Chronicles. Yeah,
It's not
that
even
was-
quality of life. It's just
Well, they
amazing.
added
No, but
online multiplayer and broke everything.
And
yeah,
Just
yeah,
bleep
yeah.
the next 50 things I say as all these expletives fly out of my mouth.
I wouldn't
Is
blame
that
you.
they sacrificed the couch co-op to try and add multiplayer online.
And it was it
And it was a
destroyed
disaster.
the game. That was my example as well. Yeah.
Yes, it was a disaster, and they called it a quality of life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
Disaster.
Yeah,
You literally
well-
just broke. There's literally things that could happen
Yeah.
in the original that cannot happen now because
Cutscenes
it
you
doesn't
can't
have
see.
cutscenes.
Well,
yeah, whole
here's the
cutscenes.
thing. Ultimately, that it comes down to is that companies don't preserve anything. They literally don't preserve a single thing.
Don't try to change the subject.
It's
Answer
not, no,
the
but
question.
this is literally this is it. Okay, is that if you are looking for preservation, okay,
No. What is your line where quality of life infringes on the game being preserved?
any single change, no matter what quality of life improvement it is, but this is
It's
my
too
point,
much for you?
is too much. But this is my
Oh.
point. Is that if you are looking for game preservation on the Nintendo Switch from the company Nintendo, you are a fool. If you want to preserve this game and you grab the ROM files and you set your emulator up to emulate it perfectly, which you can do, then that's perfectly fine.
You can't.
However,
We're discussing two different things. Yeah, is what I
Yeah.
think what
no,
you're
no,
saying.
Yeah,
you
no.
said you said the question was how much quality of life would be infringing on it being preservation.
Yeah, where's your line? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
the line is instantaneous.
Yeah.
No matter what you change, if you make the frame rate higher,
This is the
Right.
guy
If
for which you
if-
need why it
if-
needs to be an optional.
yeah,
if
right.
you make
Because
the-
this guy will freak
no,
out.
well, here's my point. The reason I won't freak out is that if I'm playing a game on the Nintendo Switch, then my complaints about game preservation go out the window because I'm looking in the wrong place. Right? You know, if I open a can of this sparkling water that the label is sparkling water and I expect high quality red wine,
Right.
then I'm a fool. So if I go onto the Nintendo Switch,
I will say you can't
looking for that.
actually, by that
No.
by the most purist argument, there is no way to preserve games unless you
the-
literally use the
if
original
you use
hardware.
the original hardware, that
Yeah.
is
Now, on the original types of TV.
The
if they
only
were like
thing that-
reprinting the original discs
yeah.
or something.
No. The only reason that that's not really relevant is that we're not
Yeah.
talking about hardware preservation. We're exclusively talking about the game.
No, I mean if
in
you
its,
if
in
you
its close and
emulate, the
original
game
form.
will always change.
To some degree,
to
that is
some
true,
degree
yeah.
that's true,
That
but
is
not
true.
in a way that
That's
is
how they caught the
necessarily
Donkey Kong
noticeable.
guy cheater. No, it's noticeable because that's how they
depends,
caught the Donkey Kong guy cheater. He
Yeah.
was playing on an
If you want
emulated
to talk about specific
board.
situations, you can get into. But
I just mean if you're getting if it literally is any change, then
has
there's
the
no
code been
way.
altered in any way?
Well, an emulator, yes,
yes.
it
I'm
has
saying
to. Yeah.
you can directly dump a ROM file from a cart.
No, the ROM itself is preserved, but if you're playing
That's
it on an emulator, the code has changed.
The code has to
execution
change.
has changed.
The execution has changed.
Yeah.
The thing is the way that we preserve this is by putting it in a form as close as possible. And what I'm saying is...
You're talking about experiences.
Experiences.
I started off with game preservation. We're talking about ports. We're not talking about Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah.
It's literally just a bunch of ROMs dumped into an emulator. I'm talking about like a great example is Pikmin 1 and 2 when they came to the Switch.
Right.
Is that they're not just the GameCube games or just the Wii games. They have other features.
Sure.
They actually lack some too. They're not new play controls.
They're like a weird hybrid. It does have motion control, but you're right. It's not pointer controls.
Have a pointer
because you don't have a
pointer
pointer
as a Wii does. But that's the thing though. Okay, you port something. Here's how I'll explain it.
So you're playing a port, and you go like, okay, I want this to be true to the original, but I need some quality of life.
Again, I think options are the best solution to this because
Probably,
again, if you want to talk about when does it stop preserving the experience?
Yeah,
instantly when you change something because Because again, I mean, the issue is that if I play an emulated game,
philosophically, yes, but when does it bother you? When are you like, I don't want to play this? Because you just said actually that arcade elements need to go away.
No. I don't think that they need to go away.
No, I mean like
I'm saying that
you specifically called out arcade elements, and you listed their address and said that you were going to kill
it. Well, that's was
unalive their children.
Addressed, who sent you that package? No, but this is my thing: is when I look at the arcade elements, I'm saying our modern sensibilities have moved on. We don't like arcade elements anymore because we find them pointless. And with an emulator, of course, you have the option to turn it off. You have the option to leave it the way that it was originally.
Right.
If you have a port and you want to make it to where it is perfectly the same experience, that's great. But the problem is that they add additional content.
Yeah.
Right. And if it is unavoidable, right? If the experience cannot be played in the original way, then that's a problem.
It's really interesting that you bring that up because I think that's kind of where it diverges. Is there's game preservation. Like I have a really good emulator that has like a bunch of preservation features on it, and I have it both on my PC and on my Retroid.
Yeah. And
then both on my PC and on my Retroid, I also have an emulator that like injects a lot of code to fix things, and I think of them in completely different ways.
Yeah.
So like I was recently replaying through the game Rune Factory Frontiers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And enjoying it quite a bit.
It's a fun game.
But it has a couple mechanics I don't like, and it has one mechanic that I just didn't want to deal with. So it has like these like runies that you gather and you migrate them around to try and balance the ecosystem. Everyone hates it. Doesn't work great.
Yeah.
It's very annoying.
And I'm sure you can change it.
I turned it off. Yeah, I injected code that turns it off.
And you should have the right to do that, sir.
Exactly. There's a way to preserve it exactly the way that it was.
Yeah.
And then there's a way to match it to my modern sensibilities. And then there's also just the fact that they want you to have a limited amount of energy every day to spend. And ultimately, I would get to the end of the amount of energy I could spend in a day because I'm pretty good at the game, playing it for a long time. I know what to do.
Yeah.
I run out of things to do in a single day and go, I could move the clock forward like they're telling me to, but I'd rather just keep playing on this day.
But don't you think that it's a horrible thing that if you were a weirdo that really loved the fact that, Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong all have lives and game over screens, if you're a weirdo that loves that, right? And they did not give you the choice to have that in the original form.
That's an interesting
angle.
Don't
you feel that that's a little bit...
So
I didn't think about that. The option to shut it off. That is good.
That's kind of the thing is I was going to say is, yes,
the toggle on the Halo remake
on my retro
classic.
Oh yeah, Monster Boy, Dragon's Trap.
That was a great quality of life, because it was like a completely different game, and then you could live toggle it to the exact original game.
See, and I don't understand why that's not just the standard.
The norm,
because you look at these games that it's like you could just so easily make it a toggle feature, right? Where it's not like this is going to drastically extend production time on these, right?
Right.
So I don't get why. I think that it's not very fair to people who...
Sure.
When we're talking about ports, the thing we're talking about too is a little less of game preservation, because I don't consider my ports
almost
to
like
be preservation.
game reintroduction.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how do you experience this game by today? Right. Not as it was back then. How is the experience today?
Talked to a young guy recently, and his favorite Zelda game was his first, he said, which was Wind Waker. And he was young, and I was like, "Did you have a GameCube?" He was like, "No, Wii U." Like
we played it on the Wii U.
Yeah, he's like, "I didn't even know it was a remake until I was older."
I'm not really old, but that does feel really old.
More time has passed from right now to Wind Waker HD. There's more time in between us and Wind Waker HD than there was between Wind Waker HD and Wind Waker. So think about that. Think about that.
I don't want to think about
if they
that.
remade Wind Waker HD again,
I don't.
He's spiraling, guys.
If any of that got picked up
from Michael B. It did.
But okay.
Regrettably,
okay.
I'll just mute him.
That's fine. All right. Well.
Yeah. So the game that I wanted to list was Wind Waker HD because it's the only one where its quality of life improvements I feel even mixed about. Like, it's hard for me to feel bad about drift.
Yeah, I was about to say. Well, yeah, I think we're both. I think all of us probably do not feel, except for you, apparently, mixed about Wind Waker's
here's the thing: is I love the changes in Wind Waker HD to the point where, like, I have a hard time booting up the original Wind Waker because it's like, well, Wind Waker HD, right? But here's all I mean: there is a weird thing where it has slowdown where the original Wind Waker didn't. I don't get that.
Okay,
that's strange. Explosions, had some weird explosions make slowdown, but not on GameCube. Anyways, but the
no slowdown on the emulator. I just played Wind Waker HD on
emulator, flexing on us every podcast.
But I mean, Wind Waker HD in 4K podcast. Looks stunning.
No, I'm sure that would be amazing.
Great. I mean, it's phenomenal. You can play it on the Steam Deck. I mean, it's just great. Anyways, continue.
So, no, but the thing that's interesting is, like, there is an element where I'm like, between specifically the fast sail and then the Triforce fetch quest. Like, obviously the fast sail was, they've already confirmed. Aonuma already said the fast sail was in the original game. The Zora sail is in the files.
Yeah.
It just literally, the GameCube couldn't load that fast. So they're like, we can't make you move that fast. So they just took it out. So it arguably was part of the original part of the game, but as soon as I get that fast sail, I never use the Song of Wind anymore. And then, like, there are elements to, like, tracking down the Triforce that, you know, when I was a kid, felt like I was a pirate on a treasure hunt.
Sure, that's gone now.
That's just gone now.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And so I'm like, I don't like, those things are a barrier between me playing the original. So obviously I prefer the HD one, but I miss them, and I'm sad that this kid I'm talking to and couldn't relate to those things.
Because they've never played the original.
Because he was like,
at all.
He was like, bro, because we were talking, and he was laughing about the fact that he didn't know it was a remake until much later in his life. And then he was like, isn't it true that, like, you didn't have the fast sail in the original game? And I was like, no, you didn't. He's like, that's insane. How did you even play the game?
It's so fun, not to get off on a tangent here, but it is so funny to me that you can set the difficulty bar on a game literally into like ancient torture levels of difficulty, right? Like, will cause you mental exhaustion levels of difficulty, and people will be excited to watch their character get eviscerated over and over again. Sure. But if you put in a puzzle that doesn't have a clear answer, they will put your video game into the trash can. Right.
Yeah.
I had in our
they're not beating their head against
in our D&D campaign, you know, that I'm the DM of. I had this one part where I decided to give them a riddle, and the trick to the riddle was that at the end of the riddle, it's asking you what order to push these buttons in. You have all these buttons, and I was like, the riddle goes on, and I list off all these different things.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the answer to the riddle is to just say the riddle back to me. Because I'm talking about, like, there are mountains, they're all different buttons, mountain, stars, and the moon, right? And I list off this, like, journey of these characters who go through, like, one mountain, they see a bunch of stars, they go to the moon, and then they see another mountain, right? And I list the mountains. The trick to the riddle is just to say it back to me. Just say I push the buttons in the order of, and then just say the riddle back to me. Because it's the simple... 35 minutes of everyone yelling at the person trying to solve the riddle and all of them getting it wrong except for 2 of my quietest players sitting there going, I think it's this. And they were absolutely right. And then they went over and over and over again. And they were like, man, that was a hard one. And I was like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, it just wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
It literally
if I
wasn't.
throw a giant monster at you that's 10 levels higher than you, you will giga brain it and have such a fun time losing the fight against it. But the second you have a puzzle that's not instantly solvable, you will put that game in the trash. Wind Waker's has always been that way to me, is that, like, I feel like I don't think the Triforce quest is a well-designed quest. It's a poorly designed quest in a lot of ways. But the main thing that holds it back is it asks people, hey, think a little bit about this puzzle. It doesn't have an answer.
Yeah.
You know, like, you have to go and find the answer. You have to look at a map and, like, figure out, oh, hey, this map has the moon on it a bunch. And I bet if I look up at the moon, I can see a cycle. And that's how I'll find the good shit.
If you add, basically what you're saying is if you add any amount of tedium, people won't play it. They'll literally throw it away.
People did play it, but they clearly complained ad nauseum because if you go back and look at, game FAQs from 2004, it won't shut up about the Triforce quest. I think the main point here is that I think most of us do prefer these things. With the fast sale, if you don't like the fast sale and you want to do your little song there, just don't use the fast sale. No one's forcing you. The Triforce quest is something that I do think that they should have both ways.
Toggle, yeah.
Because here's the thing. I don't want to play the original Triforce quest, okay?
No, I don't
But some people might, and I respect them, okay?
Sure.
I don't want to have lives in Banjo-Kazooie, but some people might, and I respect them. At the same time, again, I feel like if you want preservation, the files are out there. You can preserve it. There are now actual foundations to preserve game files. Sure. That's all great. The company is not responsible for giving you the same product that you got when you were a kid. And that's the main issue. Is it's like the company wants to put out a game that modern players will enjoy, and that kid you're talking about... He doesn't have any nostalgia for Wind Waker.
No, he has nostalgia for the remake.
He has nostalgia for the remake, but he played the remake without any idea that it was different when he first played it. So
he thought it was a brand new Zelda
Their
game.
first responsibility is to provide a good game product,
which they clearly succeeded because he didn't think, this game's
with
obviously old. He was just like, what a great new game.
So
it has all the modern features I expect.
Yes, so I don't think this is a problem of change is bad necessarily. It can be. You mentioned Crystal Chronicles.
Oh, boy.
But my point is that if you want preservation, it's out there. You don't need to look for the company necessarily. It would be great if they had a toggle feature. But at the end of the day, if I want to play Wind Waker's GameCube, you download a ROM of Wind Waker's GameCube and you play it, right? So, I don't know. I think that there's an element of complaint that may be somewhat unfair.
Sure.
You know,
I saw a guy complaining that the remake of Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse,
right?
It was a Sega Genesis game, and then they remade it for Xbox 360, and it's now on Steam and other things. They were complaining because they're like, the remake's beautiful and everything, but it's too easy. And I'm like, it's because the Sega Genesis game's bad. It's a bad game. That's a bad game.
No.
It's a Mickey Mouse game, and it's so hard.
It is really hard.
That an adult 32-year-old man can't beat it. It's a bad game. And I beat the remake, and it was really fun. And I'm like, they made it good. Quality of life was just slathered all over that.
I think we solved it, guys.
We solved it. We did it. All right, we're gonna close out with the lightning round of games. It's my favorite thing ever. I love it so much. Yes. Games I have not played, but I have a strong opinion about. In this game, you name a game that you haven't played. You then say your strong opinion briefly.
And no one gets to comment.
And no one gets to comment. We're gonna start with the guy who came up with the game. our editor,
Ebba Sneezer here.
Ebba Sneezer.
God alive.
Michael B, give us a game you've never played.
If he's not
and
secreting.
Your brief, strong opinion about it. We're not gonna
Lord.
comment about it. And I love the fact that we gave him a microphone, and he's just like, I'm gonna say my funniest lines with it off.
I'm not. This thing is not getting on. Okay, go ahead.
Go, Michael B.
You got this.
I want to go last.
Okay.
Producer man.
Is this? Yes.
That's not the wavelength for your microphone.
So it's not going to show up.
Yours is on. Yours is on.
You're
Okay,
good.
cool. All right. What have I not played? I have not played any good games.
Okay,
Right.
well,
So
tell
give us an opinion about a good game.
A good
Then
game that you haven't
literally
played.
name any game.
Okay. Skyrim
Okay.
is a terrible game. You can't re-release a game broken like 50 times and expect me to say that's a good game if you're not going to fix it. So if you don't fix it yourself, if I have to put in 200 mods to get your game to run and then so I can finish it, it's a bad game and everyone is.
That's fair.
We have to
Gotta bleep
bleep
that.
And I have to believe him.
We have to
His
bleep
one
that.
line.
All right.
All right, Ethan, go.
Oh, a video game I haven't played that I have a very strong opinion about.
Yep.
And this is going to be kind of interesting, because it correlates with something I said before that we've never circled back around to, but we keep talking about it.
Okay.
I've never played RuneScape.
Oh.
I've never played RuneScape.
What's your strong opinion?
But my really strong opinion about it is that it is fantastic.
Yes.
It is fantastic
Okay.
in a nostalgic, bad old game jank way of like Darkest Dungeon, you know?
I think people just say it's very simple, right?
It's just goofy goober game.
Yeah.
And something tells me that it's good.
That's cool. I've not played it either.
This is my impression of someone playing RuneScape.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's all you can do in the game.
Kind of like Cookie
There's
Clicker.
no other buttons.
That's nice. That's
Go,
nice.
Ty.
No, I want to go last.
Oh, you want to go last? Okay.
You go.
I have never played any Zelda CDI games. I've not played the Wand of Gamelon.
You're missing out.
I've not played the
Yeah.
Faces of Evil, and I've not played Zelda's Adventure. Is that it? Is
Yeah,
that the other one?
that's it.
The top-down one?
Echoes of Wisdom.
No, that's not it. Here's the crazy thing though. In my opinion, all right, if those games did not exist, we would not have Breath of the Wild. I will not explain.
You couldn't. You couldn't if you.
Go, Quin.
He's just making.
It's a
so
fact,
I
though.
have a
That is
problem
true.
where I'm trying to think of a game that I have not played that I have a strong opinion about, and the issue is that I've played so many games.
You've
that
never
I have,
played anything.
there's
I have
so many games you have
that
not
I've-
Any
I-
from
I-
the last 40
So
years.
this is what I'm going to say. So I'm going to just say, can you all? I want you all to just say a game real quick that you don't think that I've played, and I probably have an opinion about it.
Splatoon 3.
Splatoon 3.
That's a perfect question.
Locked and
Go for
loaded.
it.
Yeah,
Locked and
he was
loaded with
ready.
that
He
one.
was
Yeah.
ready.
Splatoon might be the most interesting take on a team shooter that is. It's amazing because it's a new IP, right?
Yeah.
It's. I haven't played Splatoon 3, so I don't know if it's any good. I haven't played Splatoon. I know I played Splatoon 2, I think. Maybe. I definitely played the first one. I don't remember if I played
I've
the second
played
one.
Splatoon 2 with you.
Okay, then I've played Splatoon 2. I don't even remember. But Splatoon as a franchise, I think that it is such a creative and interesting idea, and I think that it's pretty neat. With 3, I didn't even know that it existed. I had no idea that there was a Splatoon 3.
Best
And-
game,
and my-
best multiplayer game of 2023. Game
I would
Awards.
say I think that was literally when I found out that there was a Splatoon 3 was at the Game Awards.
Worst ways to find it.
What I'll say is it's a new IP, it's fresh, it sounds great. However,
It's off the hook.
it's off the hook.
This is such a brief point.
Well, the strong opinion I'm getting at is that the issue is that I think Nintendo creates these they just throw stuff at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah.
Right? And because Splatoon, actually had people wanting to play it, I feel like it's going to be a game that we will get for the rest of time, and it's going to drive me insane. Right? It's one of those things where I'm just like, I think we did it. We did Splatoon. We don't need to do it anymore. Maybe you can make another one. Is Splatoon 3, can you do other things in it? Did they add new game modes, I'm guessing?
We can't answer.
Right. I'm going to say that maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And since they can't answer, I can't know. And I don't care. I just don't. Once I saw that there was a Splatoon 3, I didn't feel like an urge to play it because I just look at Nintendo's constant cycle of production. Just like, I don't really know. I don't have a...
Here's the Splatoon 25.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
All right. To take us home.
Okay.
Castle of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse for the Sega Genesis, is actually really easy.
Yeah,
and they should not have made the remake so much easier. You're an absolute wuss if you can't.
You're pathetic.
Beat that game on Sega Genesis.
Wow.
Yeah. No one's allowed to respond.
No one's allowed to respond. Wow. I really appreciate that point,
guys.
That was really great.
Join us next week. Ty will be here.
Ty's out of the podcast.
Thanks,
goodbye,
guys.
Goodbye.
I'm starting my own podcast about how games are too easy.
Look, I still can't look into the camera. You better fix
come
that.
Right here.
You better.
I like how Quinn's not looking at the camera at all.